Research shows there are three subtle habits most men have that shuts off parts of your brain that create joy. And it's way deeper than just overstimulation. I felt empty and drained for 20 years because I kept doing these unconsciously. But once I stopped, my joy returned and my life changed completely. In this video, I'll share what these habits are, how they're quietly stealing your joy, and how to replace them instantly. Let's start with the first one, which is the most debilitating of the bunch. Have you ever had this experience when you achieved something that technically should be making you happy, but it still doesn't? Well, that was me 6 years ago. I was basically emotionally dead and nothing really excited me. So I came up with a brilliant solution. I thought I'll start improving myself and optimizing my life. That would surely make me feel good inside. That's when the hamster wheel of self improvement began. I used all the willpower I had to take crazy action. I would meditate for an hour daily, do journaling, breathwork, exercise, eat healthy, sleep on time. I even stopped jacking off. Externally, I became a lawyer, grew my previous YouTube channel to 10k subs in 6 months, started my business, and coached people for hundreds of hours as an emotional wellness coach. But none of this meaningfully impacted how I actually felt inside. Here's why. Modern men, as boys, are taught to consciously and subconsciously push down their negative emotions, which becomes not just a habit but a part of their personality. After reading dozens of books on emotions from the perspective of psychology, neuroscience, and even spirituality, I learned a key insight. When you suppress negative emotions, you also suppress your joy because your emotions are like a pendulum. If you stop it on the unpleasant end, its swing gets limited by the same extent on the pleasant end as well. Decades of emotional suppression caused my pendulum to get stuck in the middle. And no matter how much I improved myself or achieved, my joy was limited to the swing of my pendulum. That's why so many successful men kill themselves. Take, for example, Robin Williams. His films, actings, and personality was loved by millions, including myself. But he still hung himself in his room because he was suffering inside. No amount of external achievement fixes an internal emotional problem. The amount of joy I experienced in life did not increase until I addressed this first habit of suppressing emotions head on. So, how did I do that specifically, and where can you start? The opposite of suppression is not expression, but rather experiencing. Most men don't know this, but recent research shows that emotions are experienced in the body as sensations. That is why when I was in the habit of suppressing my emotions, I felt completely dissociated, disconnected from my body. This is also the premise of the book, The Body Keeps the Score. The way I countered the effect of decades of suppression is to rebuild this connection. How? Researchers found that just 10 to 15 minutes of daily body based practices like yoga and Tai Chi are exceptionally effective for re establishing that connection and healing trauma. One of my favorite ones is Yoga Nidra. Another simple way you can start applying this right now is get into the habit of asking yourself this one question every time you feel something. What does this feel like in my body? I know this sounds a bit vague, but don't worry. I'll share a very specific tool for you at the end, which will make this 10 times easier. By the way, if you'd like to feel alive and excited again for good, click the link below, and every week I'll send you practical tools and frameworks that are proven to work for men. Now, let's move on to the second habit that numbs your joy, and this one will surprise you because it blew my mind away when I learned about it. How are you feeling? How many times have you been asked that question and you genuinely had no clue how you felt? So you just said something vague like good or fine. Well, it turns out how good you are at identifying and naming your emotion significantly impacts your feelings of numbness and lack of joy. Research shows men who can't identify and name their emotions are 8 times more likely to be depressed as opposed to regular people. But I don't blame you. It's again the way men are raised. We are barely encouraged to voice our emotions, much less use specific words. Hell, I've been studying this for half a decade and I still struggle to label my emotions. Although the good news is you can get better. Because 6 years ago, my emotional vocabulary was fuck all. I knew 5 emotion words at max: happy, sad, shitty, angry, tired. Here's the study that shows why building emotional vocabulary is a must. A group of people who had extreme fear of spiders were put in a room and they were asked to approach a big spider kept in a cage. Half of the participants were asked to use emotion specific words to describe how they were feeling as they approached the cage, like anxious, scared, petrified, while the other half were asked to use neutral words to state what they saw. The spider is black, it's on the table, and so on. Members of the first group were able to take more steps closer to the spider and were much less scared, which was measured by how much they sweat and their heartbeats and so on. But why did just labeling, giving words to their emotions make such a big difference? There's a part of your brain called amygdala, which scans the environment for danger and increases your stress accordingly. When you label your emotions, it decreases activity in this part of your brain. This calms you down immediately. Labeling also activates another part of your brain called prefrontal cortex, which manages your feeling. This further helps you process any emotion. Here's how this is relevant for you. The worse your emotional vocabulary, the narrower your pendulum swing, which contributes to numbness. In fact, increasing your vocabulary is one of the fastest way to expand the pendulum swing and bring back your joy. So how can you build emotional vocabulary? Psychologists use this emotion wheel to help clients label their emotions using specific words. It's simply like learning any other skill. The more times you use specific words from the circle, the better your vocabulary will get. But you don't have to screenshot this and refer to it every time you feel something. The tool I'll share in a minute will help you with this as well. Which brings me to the third habit, breaking which is what changed my life, no exaggeration. Have you ever had an over the top reaction? Like you lashed out at someone unexpectedly and then later thought to yourself, where the fuck did that come from? It was not really that big of a deal. When you get triggered like this, it's a key into your subconscious. But most men just ignore it and carry on with their lives. Someone does something, you get triggered, you ignore it. And this cycle probably continues for the rest of your life. Every time you ignore your triggers, you're losing out on so much critical information that would not only help you reduce such reactions in the future, but also expand, increase your pendulum swing. As a result, increasing your capacity to feel joy. Here's how you can actually utilize these triggers. It's something that I learned from a beautifully titled book, Permission to Feel, which is to become an emotion scientist. Let me explain. Most people, men specifically, are emotion judges. We judge certain emotions as bad or weak and others as good or positive. You try to avoid these at all costs and try to feel more of these every day. Instead, having a curious scientist like mindset, especially towards the negative feelings, allows you the space to label them, notice them in your body, and then take necessary course of action, whether that action is internal or external. So the next time you get triggered, don't be a judge, be a scientist. But what specific actions you can take to become an emotion scientist? Here's literally the easiest way you can break these three habits and replace it with the two most powerful ones. A group of researchers in the Yale University looked at different researches on the psychology and neuroscience of your emotions for over 20 years. And from all that, they developed a groundbreaking approach for building core emotional skills. Luckily for you and I, they distilled everything in a free app. Can you believe that? It's called How We Feel, and I love it so much that I suggest it to every single client of mine. It allows you to use specific words to describe how you're feeling, which over time builds your emotional vocabulary. There's also a place for you to notice patterns and journal. Here you can take note of what triggered you and all the different patterns you notice over time, like an emotion scientist. And then there's my favorite feature of all, a place for you to figure out where in your body you feel the said emotion. This is what helps you build the connection with the body, which is the antidote to suppression and the key to emotional mastery. Initially, when you ask yourself, what does this feel like in my body? You might notice nothing and draw a blank. But it's just like every other skill. You get better the more times you ask yourself that question and bring attention to your body. The good news is you've done it before hundreds of times. The same part of your brain that senses physical sensations like hunger or breathlessness is what feels physical sensations of emotions in your body. You just have to train it to notice feelings. Some examples of sensation that show up are a tightness in your chest or a lump in your throat, feeling of your heart beating fast, warmth or cold, and so on. The app has many more and better adjectives. So every time you get triggered, take out 30 seconds to check in what you're feeling in this app. It'll do three things for you. It'll improve your emotional vocabulary, help you understand your patterns, and help you regulate the feeling through labeling. If you just take 5 minutes scattered across the day to do these check ins for a month, you'll build unshakable command over your feelings because of pattern awareness, better vocab, and processing. The second habit is what I call the R of PAR. This is inspired by what I've personally done consistently for the past half a decade to build these skills. Every day, dedicate 30 to 60 minutes for your feelings. Most men would disagree, but I believe this is one of the most masculine things you can do because you're addressing an issue head on from its very roots. So, what do you do in this hour of power? You introspect on whatever feelings you had throughout the day. If you checked in the app multiple times, you'll have a place to start. Instead of avoiding difficult situations and emotions, become an emotion scientist and ask yourself questions like, how did the situation make me feel? What about the difficult situation made me feel that way? And how does it feel like in my body now that I think of it again? You'll notice as you start writing the answers to these questions, you'll often have much more to write than you initially thought. I've noticed replacing this with mindless consumption before bed is an amazing way to wind down before sleep. So, these are the three habits that numb your joy by limiting your emotional pendulum. If you've been doing these for decades like me, the way to bring your joy and feelings back is to become an emotion scientist in two steps. One, use the How We Feel app to build emotional vocabulary, track your triggers, and connect with your body. And two, use the R of Power to understand how you felt throughout the day to hone your emotional skills. And don't forget, if you want more such practical tools and tips for men to feel alive again that are proven to work, links in the description. But developing these emotional skills will only take you half the way. To become fully alive, you must develop your individual strengths. So watch this video next where I share the 24 core strengths of man and how you can find your top 3 that truly motivate you from within.